right into our presentation today. So welcome again to the 2020 Virtual Summer School Series, Extension Programming for Everyone through the Lens of DEI. We're excited to have so many of you join us today for day 4. I'm Diane Mashburn, Extension Instructor with the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture. Our virtual summer school series is co-hosted annually by the Program and Staff Development Committee of the Southern Region Program Leaders Network and the National Association of Extension Program and Staff Development Professionals. Thank you to all those who helped contribute to planning this timely and important series. Our session today is Negotiation Across Diversity, Application for Extension Work, and our presenter today is Suzanna Windon from Penn State Extension. She's an assistant professor in youth and family leadership. We also have 2 co-facilitators assisting us with our Q&A today. We have Celeste Carmichael from Cornell Extension and Julie Robinson from the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture. So a little bit more about Suzanna. She joined the Penn State faculty in 2018 and is assistant professor of youth and adult leadership, including volunteer management at the Department of Agricultural Economics, Sociology, and Education. Prior to coming to Penn State, Windon worked for Ohio State University Extension in the Learning and Organizational Development Unit. Before 2011, Suzanna had 16 years of experience in research and teaching institutions in Ukraine. In addition, in 2004, Suzanna visited Penn State as a faculty exchange program participant and was a Fulbright scholar in 2008 and 2009 at Ohio State. She serves as the program director for the Agribility for Pennsylvanians. In 2019, she launched 2 programs, the Leadership Program for Farmers and Natural Resource Stakeholders, and the Volunteer Management Program for Community Leaders, Outreach Educators, Nonprofit Organization Leaders, and Volunteer Coordinators. Her master's and doctoral degrees are in agricultural and extension education with specialization in leadership and human resource development, are both from Ohio State University. Suzanna received her undergraduate and graduate degrees in agricultural economics and management from Ukrainian universities as well. So with that, I will turn things over to Suzanna and say thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Diane, for introduction. I'm really happy to be here today with all of you, and thank you so much for the virtual summer school team who give this great opportunity to all of us to enhance our ability and knowledge in area of extension. Let me share my screen. All right. All right, so let's talk about negotiation across diversity and what type of application and strategies and tips we can use in our daily life of working all together with our stakeholders, families, and children, and doing a great work. So during the session, need to adjust a little bit. During this session, we will learn more about foundation of negotiation. I will talk a little bit about differences in gender, in abilities, and personalities, and what type of strategies and tips you can use when you negotiate. Also, I try to talk a little bit about cultural background and what we need to remember when we negotiate with people who has different cultural background. So, like I said earlier, we basically negotiate with our families, with children, with friends, with stakeholders, with government agencies, with different nonprofit organizations. And I would like to ask right now our audience, how often do you experience difficulties during a negotiation? There are 3 options to answer: often, sometimes, and never.
All right, so Suzanna, we've got several of our folks have already responded, and we're just going to give a few seconds for folks to be able to read that again and enter their responses. But it's looking like a good deal of folks are responding. So we're going to go ahead and close that, and we're going to take a real quick look at the results. So 76% of our respondents said that they sometimes experience difficulties during a negotiation. The next group of folks that at 22% say that they often experience difficulties during a negotiation, and 2%, the lucky 2%, say that they never have experienced difficulties during a negotiation.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Julie, for sharing the results. And I think majority of people basically said that sometimes they experiencing difficulties. So let's talk a little bit negotiation and what behind there. So negotiation from Latin means to carry business. And any communication between two or more people with an intention to influence, we can call as a negotiation. To understand that we all have that interdependence in the relationship between people and groups very often lead us to have this negotiation process. So there are three domains of negotiation. It's relationship, substance, and process. Sometimes when we feel like things didn't go well, right? And we have some problems. And usually when we're not happy with the results of our negotiation, what often happens? We feel like relationship damaged, deals are not made, money and time wasted. So what about trust? It's under question. So one of the key concepts of in the negotiation to remember, it is zone of possible agreement, which is ZOPA. So that means that we always need to think about this yellow part of the green arrow. So which is indicate the range or set of agreement that potentially satisfied both sides during the negotiation process. So please use a chat box and share the experience that you had in the past. In your opinion, what are obstacles and complicating factors that affect the negotiation process?
All right, so as folks use their chat window to share what obstacles and complicating factors that affect the negotiation process for them is common ground, lack of understanding, misunderstanding
Absolutely.
of goals, power imbalances. I'm seeing a lot of differences in shared goals, fear, time, and effort. A lot of responses revolving around communication, language barriers, and lack of listening.
Okay, thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. I think you are all right. And according to the research, one of the key differences among negotiators, it is in interest, in judgment about the future, in risk tolerance, in time preference, in culture, in gender, in personality, in ability, and even in communication style. So we know that factors such as gender, personality traits, and abilities in people who do research in area of psychology, they usually say it is very stable individual differences. That means they basically not changing much over the time. Even they change, it takes a lot of years that something change, right? So we need to just basically keep this in our mind and just think about how can we use our knowledge and adapt ourselves to different conditions. So one of the important dilemma that we always face during the negotiation process, what information to disclose, right? So it does not matter what we basically really decide to do, we always will have a risk. So if we decide to go without disclosure of information, we still will have risk or missed opportunities, right? Sometimes when we decide to go with disclosure of the information, so we have this risk of exploitation. So just it's up to you It's based on your strategy, based on your vision and the goal what you want to really reach during the negotiation. So let me talk a little bit about application for extension work. I always recommend start from yourself. It's basically any leadership practices can confirm this from the perspective of interpersonal leadership or interpersonal leadership. So just think about how are you part of the problem. Maybe you are very frustrated. Maybe you are not being very transparent. Maybe you're delivering that message that the way that your partner probably don't hear, okay, the right way, how you wanna that's happen. So you may be concerned about convincing someone, however, not exercising your empathetic listening skills, or maybe sometimes you do some assumptions based just on your observation. So my suggestion, just get as much as possible facts, and after that, just offer your solution. So you're focusing on the agenda, but not really listening or what really mattered to your partner. I think this is an important part. So another suggestion, what barriers are preventing your work partners from thinking strategically? So consider things like how your partner would answer the questions like this: how does the work looks from here? How much time it takes? What challenges, issues, distraction am I dealing with doing this project and work? And just think about all of this kind of stuff and be always prepared. So think about what is important to me professionally. Try answer that question from your partner's point of view. What is important to me personally? What behind all of this? So how does this my tactical orientation or strategic orientation can help me? So in the conclusion, I would like to really encourage you. So your important job while you're preparing to have this negotiation or meeting, your job is engage your partner by presenting your point of view that really align with that person interest, but not the way around. So think about how you will open the conversation. Think about your introduction. Think about that both way, that it's supposed to be respectful and it's going to be compelling. And think about connection between what matter to me and what matter to that person, to stakeholders, to your partner, to a future collaborator. And just think about, does it make sense to proceed? And if yes, with whom? So like I said, preparation is a key. Very often I found that people basically have some meetings, right? Take laptop in, because they're extremely busy. I understand. We take a laptop, running to the meeting and have just few seconds to review some information. And we always in rush. However, if you're really concerned about the result or outcomes of your negotiation process, you need to be prepared. You need to take at least a half an hour to think about how you open the conversation. You need to set up expectation. You need to think about the purpose of the meeting. You need to consider all substantive points during the discussion. You need to think about different tentative agreements and issues and time frame. You need to be ready for these questions. You need to consider different options, your personal interest. It is important. It is your homework, interest of other person, criteria, and try to foster that positive communication, create welcoming environment, and think about the tentative agreement that possibly could happen. So let's talk a little bit about gender in negotiation. So I have a question to the audience. Do you believe that women and men approach negotiation differently? There are only two questions, a yes and no. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Windon, as folks weigh in on this, it's I'm going to give a few more seconds, but we've got a pretty good portion of our participants who have responded to this. And
thank you so much.
Give me one more second. All right, we're going to close the poll. And just real quick, 93% of our participants say yes, and only 7% say no.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Let's move forward. And before to move forward, okay, I would like to just say a few things about the definition of sex and gender in the literature. So sex refers to the biological categories of female and male. To those researchers who investigate sex differences believe that differences are rooted primarily in the biology, but another group of researchers, they examine gender leaning toward social explanation based on their different type of behaviors. So in the negotiation literature, I should to tell you the term gender is more appropriate and preferred, and moving forward, I will use the term gender. So the research tells us there is strategy and tactics and some expected outcomes could be different based off between female and male. So first one is relationship view of other. That's mean that a female basically a woman put more emphasis in the interaction goal in relationship part of the negotiation, while men more driven by task orientation, be very specific. Embedded view of agency, this is the same thing like female tend not draw some strict boundaries and think about relationship involvement and engage in the conversation, while men basically signaling of the beginning and end of the negotiation through his behavior. So beliefs of ability and worth, okay, sometimes female can basically underestimate themselves and about their good outcomes and is it achievable or not. So control through empowerment, problem solving through dialogue, perceptions and stereotypes. So all of the differences were found in the literature. So basically, if I will summarize everything, so how conflict is framed and interpreted, basically have this major three dimensions, relationship versus task orientation, right, between a woman and man, emotional versus intellectual, compromise versus win. So here is just like little example. In average car dealer profit, basically you see the table that was published by Oris and Sigelman in 1995 in the American Economic Review journal. So we see initial offer profit and final offer profit that dealership made much higher when they sell the car to female. So this is just an example and just food for thought. So what we basically need to think about how to, when we think about how to overcome the disadvantage of gender differences. So there are three different type of intervention that we can consider to use. So first one, it's motivational intervention. So when we activate that negative stereotype that usually motivate us disapprove it, right, through the actions. When we talk about cognitive intervention, it's we talk about having that different setup, powerful mindset. I think that's really positively affect on our behavior during the negotiation. So you kind of re-examine basically the outcomes. You re-examine the negotiation process. You try to be prepared. You set up common goals. Somebody mentioned that earlier, right? You redefine the term by itself, what is meant to be a good negotiator. And you perceive, you kind of increasing the perceptions about to control of the negotiation process. So in the last one, it's situational intervention, when basically both sides, I agree that providing and giving equal power that basically will lead to perform equally well, right? So that's what kind of strategies we can use to overcome the disadvantage of gender differences. So here are some tips that I can share with you also. So please stop to stereotype yourself. For a woman, don't replicate male style of negotiation. While I'm saying this, in the literature, there was an indication that sometimes when women use, for example, aggressive style when they negotiate, that's probably can have that still negative reaction, right? While this attribute admired in men. So we still have that kind of things. So equip yourself with information, and when you have this conversation, I always say just do your homework. Think about what a role you're gonna play in this project and what you can add to this project, right? What kind of outcomes you see could be benefit to both sides. And when I say improve your negotiation skills and practice, I think things don't happen overnight and you receive tips and strategies. I think you have to kind of think through that and start to apply in your daily life, when you talk to your friends, when you talk to your family members, when you talk to your co-workers, and it will come like more natural way over time. So I think always remember about that zone of possible agreement to find that middle set of arrangement that could be really satisfied both sides. And think about the talent, think about your personal talent, think about talent of that people who are doing that project together with you. Think about strengths and think about the benefits that this project probably can bring to the community, to your teamwork, and just take you to another higher level. And when you have this negotiation strategies, just think about build that type of welcoming environment from the beginning, and try to see people as collaborators instead of see in someone as a competitor. I think that's help you really build trust and build a better relationship from beginning. So let's move forward and discuss a little bit about personality and ability. So personality trait are stable tendencies to think, feel, or behave in certain ways that can be identified and measured. Predictors of negotiation behavior could be conflict style, right? And I'm not gonna go discuss about in depth in conflict styles, but many of you recognize this Thomas Kilmann conflict style diagram. And I would like just pay attention in this case that compromising in the middle, right, middle box, will basically show the moderate on both assertiveness and cooperativeness. And that's what we really want to get when we have that negotiation process, right? Because we think about ideal situation like win-win situation, but negotiation basically it is give and take things, and we need to always consider that dilemma, right, that I talked earlier. Always keep in mind that zone of possible agreement, and I think you always will be more successful when you just keep in your mind and practice that. So social value orientation, this is all about pro-self or pro-social, okay? And I encourage to always take the side to be more pro-social when we discuss more oriented on cooperation, collaboration. You show your concern, okay, when you show that you care really about the situation. And just little example, just ask yourself, if your co-workers, if your partner will really care about you as a person, what would be your attitude, your behavior toward the work you do? And I think it would be much better, right? Because it is important. So I always, in my any leadership trainings, I usually say to showing your concern, show people that you really care about them, you care about this result, you care about that benefits. I think that basically change, you building again that interpersonal trust, which is the next point here on the slide. So self-efficacy, it's again about your mindset, it's about your motivation, it's about keep track of the process, it's about some the steps in analytical strategies that you use, self-monitoring, monitoring your reaction and emotion, and face rate sensitivity. So this is more about sometimes we hear like reputation, right, in images. We hear like words like losing face or saving face. So I think this is all important things when we building our reputation, and always remember about that. And all of this predictors basically on negotiation behavior of the person who negotiate. So here is an example from the literature and research. Berry and Fieldman in 1998 investigated how big 5 personality factors, and you see on the left side of your screen in the table, really relates to negotiator behavior in negotiation outcomes. And research tell us, for example, negotiators who in high have that extroversion, right, and agreeableness, many times or more likely to do worse for themselves. So this is another food for thoughts, and please think this about this information, and just probably think about how would you do or make this business differently, right? How you convey the conversation, or what you should to take into consideration. Just be open, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about some tips and strategies how to do that. So ability in negotiation, when we talk about ability in negotiation, so there are 3 components. It's cognitive ability, in which generally refers in very general mental capability that we see through the how person make a decision, right? How ability to provide reasoning or plan or solve problems, how quickly that person can learn from their personal experience, or how person basically learn in general. So emotional intelligence involved all the perceptions, comprehension, and regulation of the emotions. It's all about how we perceive and express emotions, like our emotions, and how we kind of like can access make that assessment of emotion of other person, right? And just analyze and control ourselves. So perspective talking ability. So it's all about how you perceive, understand in response to different type of arguments. So just always remember that is, when we talk about negotiation, we talk about interdependence between people. We need to take into consideration all of these differences that all of us have. So do our best to resolve that and find probably great solution, that common grounds, right? So let's go back to our field and extension, and I would like to provide some few strategies that you can take into consideration when you have that negotiation process. So foster behavior of superior negotiator. Like again, I'm going to go back what I said earlier. Always be prepared. Be prepared. This is key. This is absolutely key in negotiation field. So pre-negotiation planning. So think about different outcomes or options, okay, and issues behind. Think about area of common grounds. Think about for long-term perspective, okay, and one of the another great suggestion here, don't focus on the fixed points. Give this like range of maybe goals or outcomes that possible happen, right? And it's again, I take you back to that zone of possible agreement. Remember that and think about this diagram. So when you have that face-to-face negotiation, so be ready to make some few counter proposals and describe less their offers, but still be positive. And avoid that defend attack style that sometimes really lead to the more negative, environment. And I would really encourage you to ask more questions and ask more profound questions. I'm going to talk a little bit later about this. And every time when you get some agreement, even tentative agreement, summarize that and just indicate that we are doing great, we are making progress, and that's what's important. So just keep this in mind. So here are the 10 top information gathering tactics. So first, leave your ego at the door. Be sincere, establish trust, list your information list, do the big schmoozy, right? Again, it's all about be friendly and create that welcoming environment. Ask questions. And here I would like to emphasize, ask profound questions. In the book, Leading the Change, Kotler said it is important to ask profound questions because when you ask profound questions, you always have a good answers. You can think and plan your further actions, right? You have more clear, crystal clear vision about things, what's going on. If you don't ask profound questions, I think it's difficult to make a solution. It's difficult to move forward. Just be very conscious about that. Prepare and be prepared for advance. So be a very active listener, and sometimes use the power of silence. Don't forget about that. And another great suggestion, don't talk about just your position. Just show the curiosity. Ask why that's happened, right? Or show that interest, show that you really care about this. And it's gonna be different feedback. It's gonna be, you will feel this different atmosphere. So you will foster that collaborative, cooperative atmosphere, and you will have feelings like you control the situation, basically. So in time when you deal with some emotional issues, so there is a few tips. Don't react, okay? That we are all human, and sometimes we overreacting and we make worse to ourselves. So I would recommend don't react. Just basically, I have a glass of water with lemon, and just say, I need to just get some, glass of water. I need to just drink something, or just I need to fresh air and go to balcony, or just never argue. Just try to come up with, just, that you prepared, that you have a fact. Just when you can continue conversation based on the real data, real facts and justification. And believe me, people understand, they will hear you. And when you have that issue, emotional issue, don't have that personal, try to depersonalize the situation and provide some independent examples or standards, or just do it a little bit differently. So let's move forward, and now I would like to focus on negotiation across culture. And again, I would like to all of you please participate and use the chat box, and based on your experience, in your opinion, what are cultural barriers are? And Julia will help us.
All right. One of the responses is body language, small talk, social physical distance, language, social norms, terminology, etiquette, food and habit,
Absolutely.
voice tone, power differentials.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk about all of this.
Religion.
Yes, absolutely.
And facial expressions are some of those nonverbals.
Absolutely. You know what, you hear my accent, right? And you hear that Diane said that I'm originally from Ukraine. When I came to United States, it was in Washington, D.C. And after that, spending 2 months there, came to Penn State. I remember it was just cultural shock all the 6-7 months. And I was I was always seeing this happy faces, smile, and I heard about American Smile, but I really was here, you know, I really was seeing this. And I tell you, it wasn't really common in Europe. So if someone have been there, so probably catch that. So this is just little things that I experienced. And it was a good experience. So before I move forward and talk about cultural barriers and things and what we need to take into consideration, I would like to give you just example that many of you really know and probably just don't think about very often. So we all know that global brand Pepsi Cola, right? Pepsi, and their slogan in 70s was "Come alive, you are in the Pepsi generation," right? I think that many of you know that. So from the perspective to better understand how another culture see that, and you see on the screen how people from China or Taiwan see that slogan. They understand that like resurrection, okay? Pepsi will bring your ancestors back from the dead. I think it's funny, but it's funny for us, but it's not funny for them. So just think about how much money the companies basically could lose if they will not take into consideration that cultural things that we really need to take into consideration and think about when we do any business. I'm talking about this because I know that a lot of extension professionals working with different communities, right? And they have projects internationally. And I think it is really important to know all the details in like all the cultural things that behind and we really don't know. So another example, like when Chevrolet introduced the Nova in South America, they were apparently unaware that in Spanish, Nova means it will not go. So just think about this example. And when I see that, I always have a smile on my face because yeah, it's reality. And that's, we are different, right? We just need to remember that. So very well explain that basically, what's going on in through the Hall's model of cultural values, and Hall's explained that through the differences between culture through the communication context, because some cultures has high communication content and someone have low context communication. So that means someone very direct, very like, you know, very direct and explicit through the words, and someone could be less direct and add more like surrounding context. So it's depend from culture, right? What about time? Time depend from different culture in just the communities. It could be they see things differently too, right? When, for example, here in the US, when we say that meeting at 10 a.m. or our webinar at 3 p.m. So I saw a lot of people start to join webinar in 2:50, 2:45, right? They would like to be on time, in majority on time. So in other cultures, I was witnesses of that too. So people can come. I'm not talking about 10 minutes. 10 minutes is probably could be all right for some cultures, but sometimes you're experiencing like 1 hour later, hour and a half later. So it's kind of not a big deal. So we need to take this into consideration. And there are visible culture, which is like festivals, food, music, and it's only 10%, right? And 90% that we really don't know, it's their beliefs, it's their values, it's their expectations, if they're how they raise their children, what about their religion. And I remember that Julie mentioned that when she read all the comments that you provided in your chat. Thank you so much. So yeah, their etiquette and assumptions and a lot of other things which we don't know. So in 2012, Schwartz published an article when he described basically all that 10 fundamental values that can describe a different culture. So definitely it could not be 100%, but at least it's good that you know about this. And if you need, you always can go and use that resource for yourself. and dig deeper. Someone mentioned today some different type of uncertainty. Like in this case, I would like to share with you this table that basically demonstrate different cultural dimensions, right, and cultural ranking across top 10 countries for each of them, each of the dimension. It's individualism, power distance, assertiveness, in uncertainty avoidance. So in just knowing this, and just think about what countries and their position in this cultural table, and I think it's probably give you some ideas what's going on there. So this is just like an example, just demonstrate that culture really play a big role in have, and I continue my presentation related to negotiation. So it's really have a big effect on negotiation outcomes. It's how we exchange our informations, how we, what kind of setup we have in our mind, right, before we have this negotiation process. It's all about etiquette. It's different ethics and tactics and strategies and how we resolve the conflict itself. So it's really have a big effect, and we need to remember that. What we really need to take into consideration, its cultural context, its different biases, strength, and weaknesses, and individual characteristics. So always do your homework. And here's some strategy if you, for example, have less familiarity with particular culture or the community you're gonna work. I'm basically applying this to myself. I plan to work with Latino community sometime soon in the northeast of Pennsylvania. And I'm really not the guru in this question too. And I'm trying to involve people from their community. I try to have some panel discussion. I invite, so here you can say employee advisors, right? Bring in a mediator. Induce the other negotiator to use your approach, kind of use the joint strategy. And I think kind of increase your competence in this. If you don't feel comfortable, bring someone who really can help you. And I think this is a really good strategy to use. Even you have really great experience and you have been in work for many years with this group of people or community, I think it is still important to focus to creating that approach, joint strategy, right? A new approach, and through the communication and collaboration, it's going to be just easier to you. So I was thinking about application for extension and decided to, as an example, think about how we work with Latino talent, right? And what we really need to take into consideration when we work with Latina communities. And not often we really, not all of us, probably right way to say, think about that. Latina community within the US has 6 subgroups, okay? And you see the list in your screen right now. And we never think about so much about that. So many people in here, I have a list from 22 countries, and probably if I miss something, so please, I apologize for that, but just think about how many countries speak in Spanish. So what does mean? So here's a much more bigger thing behind this. So behind this, it's about identity. It's all about the ethnicity. It's their cultural background could be different as well. But just we need to remember that, okay? And I think it is really important. So the Latina cultural spirit, according to Rodriguez, he came up with the three areas. Interaction tendencies, they lead toward collectivism, communication, maintain positive social relationship, and friendly and respectful. Spirituality and family, they try to avoid personal conflict. Religion is important, and time. If they want to be engaged, that's what it's really, really important for them with family. So a sense of identity, like I said earlier, that's why I talk about the subgroups that why I talk about different countries, and it's about their ethnic identity. It's all about their cultural identity, assimilation and acculturation here in the United States. So I really, really love this table. And when I prepared this material for you, I wanted to really show this table in where basically you see the differences based on values, right? Latina values based on Catholicism, Spanish colonialism, and respect for tradition versus Anglo values based on Puritan, Protestant, and Calvinistic thinking of a new and free America. And Latina values, interdependence versus independence, Anglo values, family first versus me first, family helps family, helping self helps family, work hard, work smart, sacrifice, pay your duties, stability versus what is new, what is next. I accept life problem, I solve life problem. Small success is good versus big success is better. Whatever God's want, the sky is the limit. I hope to achieve, I believe I will achieve. Give respect versus earn respect. And this is kind of really important values basically that we sometimes don't even think about, and we need to take that into consideration when we're working with Latina communities, right? We need to learn. When I want to, for example, work with youth, I need to consider to learn more about their parents. I need to consider about more about their communities. So I need to have that unique experience. Think about that ethnic roadblocks that may limit their ability. Possibly that fear of rejection. Sometimes opportunities they may see as a risk, cultural factors like prefer play safe or less aggressive behavior, really tendency to be misunderstood, and just very often I feel like a lot of people, they give credit to their family, to their friends for their success, and this is tell us about their relationship, about their how close they engage with their family and friends. I think this is also we need to remember. So when I talk about tips for cross-cultural negotiation, I think it is important to show that empathy, and you can show the empathy when you really learn about that community, right? When you learn about this problem, when you learn about and raise your, just demonstrate your concern and that you really care and you really want that community benefited from your extension program. Show that, build that trust relationship. And this is emotional support. It is really important in this case. So think very seriously about instrumental support, because if you want the job be done effectively, think about everything what you can provide and training wise and resources. It is important. So the more you do investment from your side, then better result you will have in the community benefit from that. Informational support, it is important. Just remember about that people can have some personal issues or professional problems, and you need to be, as an extension educator, as a great resource who can help people and provide right information, and they will really appreciate that. So think about all this type of different support that you can provide and be very helpful. So here are all the resources that helped me to put together this presentation. I hope I don't miss anything, but if I miss, please let me know. And resources that I would like to share with you, also you can please use in your future work. My graduate student and I, we basically publish monthly volunteer management and leadership tip email, and I have another online publication. It's called Research in Brief, that relates to leadership and volunteer management as well. Also, so you can subscribe to this monthly publication and biannual publication, basically follow this link. I have Penn State Extension Leadership Network Facebook page. And if you are interested in find some information related to leadership and volunteer management extension articles. You can follow this link, and this is just an example because I have a little bit more than 30 we published it, and actually 6 of them were published translated in Spanish language. So feel free to use it to share these resources, and if you will subscribe to my newsletter, please, I always encourage extension educator, please copy paste and use this material in your professional development, working with your community leaders, and do a great job. And thank you so much, and negotiate smart.
All right, Dr. Windon, thank you so much. I am going to have you stop sharing, and we've got just about 5 minutes for questions. So I'll start with the first one. Why do some people seek to assimilate or acculturate while others hold on to their cultural norms, values, and traditions?
I think it is a good question, and I think it's depend probably from their community and family, and I think when we talk about interdependence, and I mentioned that several times, sometimes we put in that situation, right, that we have to communicate. And just think about my last slide about the providing support. I think using the strategy, just willingness from your side, being an extension professional, to share resources, invite people to have a great conversation. For example, in a lot of my volunteer management training, I said just have a box of ice cream, for example, right, and just invite people. Put together 5 slides and just foster that relationship. It's like I talked to some person and who are really successful working with community leaders, and what he said, I basically, if I have 1 hour to do some work, right, and invited them to just to probably talk about something, just some planning or talk about the project, what usually he does, 30 minutes he discusses about the work, in another 30 minutes he has fun with his people, okay, with that, and I think that's how people build relationship, and everybody would like to work with that person. So just keep this in mind. I understand that not everyone open, but I think with all your effort, sooner or later, I think situation may change. But I totally understand. I think we see that too. But we can do all our best, right?
Our next question is, what is meant by ethnic roadblocks for Latinos?
From my perspective, as I understand, when I went through the literature review and look at different resources, when I mentioned that countries, right, we have 22 countries that I listed. When we talk about people who came to the United States from different countries, Spanish-speaking countries, I consider here we need to really remember and learn more about their ethnic specifics, okay? So that's what I mean. And definitely you cannot just, sometimes you don't find this information just in open access, right? In the Google, maybe you can. However, in this case, I would really recommend use a strategy to invite someone who more familiar with this culture, who invite person who can be an advisor or be a panel or just share more information. And that's how we learn more about that ethnic blocks that prevent probably to build better relationship with this community, right? You cannot just come and show up. You still want to try to build that bridge between extension organization and, let's say in this case, Latina community, and just better understand who are there. Other people came from Mexico, or the people came from Colombia, or I'm just generally assuming, but that's what I mean when I said ethnic blocks, and it could be very different from different Latina groups, subgroups that I discussed also. Thank you for question.
All right, last one in just a minute. So we may need to expand upon this one via text But do you have any advice for someone who feels boxed in at work because of stereotypical values that you talked about? They feel excluded, having to navigate these stereotypes based on how their supervisors have been taught that this person should behave or think because of their Latino background.
Can you read the beginning of the question?
So do you have any recommendations for somebody who has a Latino background but feels kind of boxed in with some of the stereotypes that you mentioned earlier?
I think in this case, like I said before, to get probably, personally, I think that like never overreact. I think this is one of the, when we become very emotional, I think it is important, and get as much as possible like facts, or you know, for the work what you do, for the results, for outcomes. And just when you have this conversation and try to negotiate some aspects of your work, I think you should to be you should to have some justification. You should to be polite, but you're still supposed to make the progress and have that kind of points. What you're gonna, so that's mean just be prepared. If you wanna do it step by step, and if you depend what kind of goal you have, and prepare to that goal, and prepare, do your homework. And I think that's how you can to, I guess, talk and openly talk to person. And I think if you just say, if you work together, if your supervisor, just say, let's go to have a coffee and just nicely talk about what you feel, how you feel. And I think that would be probably a good advice from me right now in strategy. Just, I think most people maybe even don't think about, because they're not familiar with this culture, you know, not because they don't want, but I think just kind of just share how you feel and tell, and just be very strategic about how you present this information, in what areas, and what would you expect, and what you think would be better. I think this is really important. And many of people basically can really think about, you know what, I didn't think about, but it is good. I will really consider that. I guess that's how I see that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Suzanna, for presenting. We are out of time right now. So I saw in the chat, so many people are interested in the resources that you provided. So as we mentioned before, her presentation as well as this recording will be housed on the NAEPSDP webinar archive page. And so don't worry, you will have access to that presentation and all of those great resources. Just give us a little bit of time. We are going to make sure that this recording is accessible, so it may take us a couple of days to have that available to you. Thank you again to everybody for coming and attending and participating in today's session. Just as a reminder, we have one more session tomorrow. So before we talk about tomorrow, we would appreciate your feedback on today's session, and you'll be able to provide that in a survey that we've created, which can be accessed either by following the link we'll be sharing in our chat in just 1 second, or as we show you the closing slides, there will be a QR code that you can just snap a picture of with your phone and take the survey there. So definitely let us know, what were your key takeaways? What can we do to improve? What do you want to hear next? And also, we want to invite you to come to tomorrow's final session in our virtual summer school series. Tomorrow we will have Natalie Cook and Tom Archibald from Virginia Tech, and they'll be closing us out with their session on diversity, equity, and inclusion and extension evaluation. So tomorrow we're kind of closing that program loop with evaluation. So you can definitely go join our session you can register for our session through the NAE PSTP website. So that link, as well as the link to the survey, have just been chatted out. So definitely take advantage of that. And we hope to see you tomorrow. So thank you again to Suzanna for presenting today. Thank you to our facilitators, Celeste and Julie, to Mary Polling and helping with a Zoom technical side of things, and to everyone here in attendance. We hope you have a wonderful day and hope to see you all tomorrow. Thanks.